Forbes India presents Data Centered, powered by Legrand Data Center Solutions, designed for agility.
We joined this evening by a rather illustrious panel. We have Dr. Neeta Verma, Director General, the National Informatics Center, Mr. Sanjay Motwani, Business Head at Legrand Data Center Solutions, Ravinder Pal Singh, Partner at Kalari Capital, Mr. Ashok Singh, Executive Vice President and Head, IT Infrastructure Projects at Kotak Mahindra Bank, Mr. Shivkumar RV, Deputy Chief Technology Infrastructure at NPCI. Thank you, Dr. Neeta and gentlemen, for joining us today. It's been a rather tough 2 years now. COVID 19 has wreaked havoc across the world, spiraling many of our lives into so much uncertainty. And just when we thought there was a light at the end of the tunnel, things are looking bleak once again. The same holds for business globally, and those businesses which made massive pivots towards technological transformation over the past few years have been able to stay ahead of the game during these testing times. But with increased disruption and digital adoption, we're also witnessing an explosion of data. The COVID 19 pandemic has fast tracked the demand for IT infrastructure. With more and more consumers and businesses using data centers and cloud services, the demand for hyper-scalable data centers is only booming across the country. The Indian data center market is growing some 11.4% and is expected to scale to $1.5 billion industry by 2022. And this demand will continue to increase, driven by surges in cloud adoption, digital transformation, and social media usage, as well as Industry 4.0 technologies like 5G, artificial intelligence, and Internet of Things. That means India is only getting started when it comes to data centers. On that note, let me begin today's discussion on how the past year and a half has been and how business has fundamentally changed for you and the amends that you've had to make in your line of business. We will start with Dr. Neeta and then move around.
Thank you. Good afternoon to everybody connected online and my fellow panelists. Um, last 1.5 year, 2 years have been unprecedented for all of us, not only from professional, but I think personally also we all have seen a lot of things which we never even imagined. Before I give you the context, let me just tell you from which context I and my organization come from. I had National Informatics Center, which is primarily an IT partner to the government at central as well as state governments, and we also work with district administration. We have over 800 offices through which we provide IT solutions to various ministries and departments, state governments, and then district administrations. In addition to building IT solutions for them, we have also built a nationwide, a very solid state-of-art ICT infrastructure for the use of government. And this ranges from multi-gigabit government network, going on to data centers, to cloud, to messaging service, to video conferencing services, to even taking care of domain name services and all other things. Now, when the COVID came, we not only had, and we've seen when the COVID came, the only thing which came to all of our rescue, especially with the lockdown, was the digital technologies. They only enabled us to continue the services, whether it is interaction, whether it is communication, whether it is doing e-procurement or telehealth, teleeducation. We all have witnessed all these things. Now, with the government as government IT partner, we not only had the responsibility of making sure that we provide remote work from home facilities to government. Government had an additional responsibility of managing the pandemic also, and there also they needed to do little bit more than what they were doing in day to day these things. So the first thing which suddenly had a true surge in demand was our video conferencing service. We have been running video conferencing for quite some time. In the initial years, it was primarily a studio-based video conferencing. We had a desktop video conferencing, but that was not something which is used by senior officers or it was just used for small meetings and all. But suddenly now with everyone from home, in the initial days, we had to really move everyone to this desktop-based video conferencing where it was more of do it yourself in terms of connecting. You don't have anyone connected. So not only we had to scale our network, to be able to increase this demand, because government to government communication, you must have seen lot of senior level communication between government to IT professionals, government to pharma professionals, government to media people used to happen. I mean, each day we to had, and each of these people were again operating from their homes. Many of them were again not equally conversant to be able to do it video conferencing their own. So it was a real mammoth task, scaling the infrastructure, but hand holding people, and every meeting you had new set of people to be hand holded. But it was challenging, but I'm really glad and really proud of my teams all over India who really took up this challenge upon and made these things happen through these meetings and all. Every day you had these guidelines and policies. So video conferencing was one. Connected with this was our email cloud services also got a lot of exponential demand. Second thing for government was, because the government, every approval finally has to come on paper. So files had to move. So whether it is procurement of ventilators or food subsidy or sanitizers or any other thing which is needed, or the medicines which all were needed. So then again, we had to enable all these government functionaries all across India. We already have an e-office system through which they work, but they were largely clearing these digital files while sitting in their office. Now we had to bring them into this trusted network from their untrusted network. So our VPN service has to suddenly scale into this. And then we had to handhold them again to be able to use these digital systems of creating files, approving files remotely, because even no one was traveled to anyone. What kind of situation we were there in the initial days of scare of COVID. So that was e-office, which initially was used by central government offices, now suddenly took so much of our acceptance, so much of our demand, and we could scale these kind of services only because we had data centers, and more importantly, we had our own cloud on these data centers.
Absolutely.
Therefore, it really
Ma'am,
helped us
let me,
scaling our services to all these places. And
and
I
I think
can go on and do.
no,
This
no,
has
and
been
we'll come back to
time,
that.
but yeah.
Let me bring in Sanjay here. Sanjay, your initial thoughts on how things have changed over the past year for you, year and a half actually.
Uh, Continuing from the where Dr. Neeta left off, I mean, it's been a learning process for like all of us. Given the fact that we at Legrand service data centers, so obviously there was a huge surge in the demand for services within data centers. What became challenging for us was to be able to respond to the exponential need, the growth which the data centers wanted during the past 1.5 years, given the fact that there were logistical issues in terms of trying to provide these services, in terms of supplying equipment, being able to provide manpower to these facilities, sites, to enable all these. And obviously, the coordination had to happen not only at the domestic level, but at the global level. So, in short, what I'd like to say is I think it threw us, or it forced us to be far more agile as an organization, uh, without which we would not have been able to deliver to the demands of the data center business. So I think that's in short what we experienced, and how that challenged us and how we responded.
Absolutely. Ravi, your thoughts about how, from the VC point of view, and, as somebody who's been seeing the industry, what are your thoughts?
Well, I was not a VC when COVID really happened. In fact,
Okay.
I was actually in Mexico giving lecture on machine learning and how to build robots when it hit. So look, remembrance seems like a long time, but personally it did change. But that's a discussion for some time later. What changes? At that time, I was Chief Innovation and Information Officer at Tata Singapore Airlines, known as Vistara. Frankly, from a tech and the continuity perspective, it was not a difficult task, in a sense that I had built this particular airline on cloud, arguably the world's first airline on cloud. And then remarkable engineers who were my colleagues who had built this particular architecture, and they were running infrastructure. So from that perspective, there was no legacy, and it was built to take care of future. And in future, even though we never thought that such large workforce will certainly be transformed from work from home. But remember, in a typical airline, 40% or roughly 40 to 45% of people are anyway outside the premises of what I call as corporate network, cabin crews, pilots, and ground staff, working out of airports. So in that way, justification of investment when you set up an infrastructure and when you create assets for future. So in that way, it was justification. From a different lens, so that was a done deal. Insights during COVID. Keeping personal aside, just we'll talk for couple of minutes. I noticed in almost every domain, they were customers, companies, and regulators were unhappy, and that unhappiness was coming in. And as a technologist and a person who is deeply interested in innovation, I knew that disruption is around the corner. Usually, if one of them, whether it's customers, regulators, or company, if one of these pillars, they are the source of unhappiness, that sector usually changes. And in most sectors, ranging from airline to insurance and anything in between, all these three entities, were unhappy. And then I was quite convinced that new economies will be formed. We can talk about that later. But I knew the world will change forever, in a sense that the flywheel of economy, newer economies will become far more vigorous, and technology will be driver, and all kinds of technologies. And hence I thought that, look, both as an engineer, as an investor, and a person who loves to create things, maybe world has changed forever.
Absolutely. Mr. Shivkumar, massive boom, in digital payments. We've seen these numbers with UPI. Take us through, your thoughts on how things have changed for you.
Sure. Thanks, everyone. And on the first note, good evening, everyone. And I hope you're safe and you're doing better. Please do take care of yourself. On the very first note, I think we have been going through these tough times, especially the pandemic, right? So before I even jump in of what it has been or what the journey has been, I'd like to first quickly introduce who is NPCI. So National Payments Corporation of India, also known as NPCI, it is an umbrella organization for operating retail payments and settlement systems in India. Also, it is an initiative of RBI, it is a Bank of India, and Indian Banks Associations. So precisely, some of our product portfolios that we run, or say the services that we run for the country, are UPI. All the UPI applications that we use today, Google Pay, Phone Pay, Bheem, anyone, Paytm, you take anyone, right? Every PSP, every application, UPI application that we're using today is actually running on UPI, which is a payment rails which has been created, or say, in a way I can say it has been invented, deployed, and being scaled by NPCI. Apart from UPI, of course, we have products which are IMPS, which is a way to transfer money, immediate money transfer system, using net banking, and we have other, and we also run a card network called as RuPay. Last but not least, of course, we also do run CTS, NFS, National Financial Switch, check truncation system, and then we have FASTag, which is also known as the NETC, the RFID card based payments for your toll plazas, for your cars, in fact, or say any vehicles, in fact, let it be private or say commercial vehicles. Now, one thing that we have to note here is, yes, definitely, as you have highlighted, we have seen a boom in payments. I'll not say it was good for the payments industry, but yes, what we feel about the current situation is that the payment instruments had to be creative for this kind of a situation, and I think somewhere in this tough time, in these tough times, NPCI has played a key role in facilitating everyone in this country by introducing UPI. And also in the recent times, Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji has introduced the e-rupee as a part, which is also a coupon, or say a prepaid token for the underprivileged people who cannot afford vaccination. That is also being done using the same UPI rails. So I think the footprint of NPCI and say the payments digital revolution has been quite noticeable in these tough times. Last but not the least, I want to say one thing here, Manu. Our competition is not an individual, it's not an organization, it's not a company. Our competition is cash, and cash is king, and we call digital is divine, right? Because in tough times where we had to go ahead with contactless payments and without having a physical presence of any instrument, we had to still handle it. So I think that is where we stand today, and I hope we have been helpful, or say we have been supporting the situation as much as we could.
Absolutely. Mr. Ashok Singh, I think you agree that cash is king. How do you look back at these times and and the changes that you had to bring in?
Yes, surely. Banks as a whole are always, somewhat more ready for such a situation, because they were always, branches were there were connectivities, and every bank has seeded some technologies with the help of which they can work remotely. So that way, banks were in a way far more ready than many other organizations. And with the IT enablement, yes, there was it was possible to work remotely. Only thing was when people accepted that, yes, remotely also we can handle a lot of things in IT or other departments. So, which was accepted, and because of which, yes, we could cope up with this situation. Other greatest fear was that, yes, we as we function, we need the support, we need to scale. Okay, so how you'll be able to scale? There was the greatest fear that whatever orders you will place for new equipment, they may not reach you. Okay, that's the greatest fear. And once you have seeded the technologies, okay, like cloud, okay, so we have to rush to these vendors, cloud vendors, and ask them whether you will be able to support us. Suppose we don't get these equipments which we order, and we don't get them, and they were not allowed to land on Indian port. There are certain things which have to many times they have to return back to their destination and their place of origin, and again they have to be shipped because ports were not accepting. So these
Right.
challenges were there, and in those challenges, as an organization, if we have seeded as a technology, cloud, and all of this, these have helped. I immediately talk to these cloud vendors and ask them whether you'll be able to support during this period if I'm not able to get my equipment and all of this. They say, yes, we have the enough capacity to take care of you, because there are certain other things for which they have built the capacity could not be done because of this pandemic. So,
Absolutely.
that way we learned a new way of doing things, and many things were accepted. Security got geared up for allowing people to work remotely and take technology measures to provide secure access to your data center facilities. Okay, and in case of bank, yes, as you say, it is we manage people money, so security is very important. Compliance is very much important. So all those could be managed with the help of technology. Surely we have seeded those technologies well in advance. That has helped us here. Thank you.
Let me come back to Dr. Neeta. From what I understand, we have about 23 unique third-party data service providers supporting some 80 facilities. What are the major factors that are actually driving this data center boom in India at the moment?
You see, there. If you look at it, one thing we have seen under Digital India program of the government, which was launched by Honorable Prime Minister in 2015, since then we have seen a real exponential growth in the broadband network and also the mobile network. And therefore, and today we have 700 million plus mobile phone, rather 1.2 billion mobile phones and 700 million plus smartphone owners. So which has suddenly increased the usage of any service you put it, because you have such a large number of citizens already online, be it social media services or be it any kind of transport e-commerce services. So that use base has increased manifold. Second thing, COVID has also increased the adoption for the domains where we were not using in the past, primary school children doing tele-education, to people in remote villages doing telehealth and teleconsultation, to now we have virtual courts in this country. With all these, suddenly a new kind of adoption has happened even of the existing system, which in many of our systems also we have seen there's been an exponential growth in the existing system. Third thing which has happened is, there are very small business and small government organizations I have seen who were earlier not so digital. During COVID, they have realized that the business and the organizations which were not digital have really seen a disruption there in their services. They could not continue their services. They could not supply their things. And so therefore there is a new rejuvenated interest in doing a digital transformation. So every small and big organization is trying to go digital. Every other day I have a request from one or the other smaller organizations which are in states, which are in districts. And the same is true with the business enterprises, also small business trying to go digital. Another thing,
Absolutely.
this Data Protection Act is coming, and there has been, even in payments, you have seen there is a new requirement of data localization and data to be hosted in Indian data centers, which is again going to increase a lot of demand, create a lot of demand in terms of data centers being in India, not only of the IT systems of Indian enterprises, but even global systems which are being heavily used in India. They are also now setting up their presence in India increasingly. So I think these are the factors. Largely, cloud is becoming the, even the large enterprises who had their own data centers in on-prem data centers are now realizing that if they really want to be economical viable and they want to have an agility where they could scale their systems literally overnight basis, they need to move to cloud. So a lot of those enterprises are also moving towards cloud, and thus in turn, under cloud, if cloud, that means you need to have more and more data centers.
Absolutely. For our audience who've joined us, please do send in your questions. We'll take them towards the end of the session. Right. Let me just bring Sanjay into the conversation. Sanjay, do you agree with Dr. Neeta on what is driving the boom in India? And do you reckon that businesses are pivoting that quickly, especially during the past say 1.5 years? That's one part of it. And the second part of it I wanted to understand is that with all of this sort of happening so quickly around you, are you sort of prepared for all the changes happening?
Okay. Yes, I do agree with what Dr. Neeta has said. And just to build on that, what I'd like to say is there was a good old adage which said, consumer is the king. And it's not, it's more truer now than ever. Today, pretty much the consumer decides what the consumer wants, where the consumer wants, when he or she wants, on the device, the platform, the location, etc. The fact is that the consumer has changed considerably over the past few years. The 2 years definitely have accelerated that changed behavior. The businesses have had no choice but to respond to the new consumer behavior which is playing on today, which is why when we look at in terms of the business response. So the way I view it is it's some kind of a cycle. The consumers are changing based on the technology which is thrown at them. The business is then responding to the speed at which the consumers are changing. And then the technology has to respond what the business demands. So it becomes some kind of a cyclical loop, and this cycle is ever increasing in pace. And I think Ravi mentioned earlier that technology is now coming in the front. I agree with that wholeheartedly, and I pretty much say that technology, which was pretty much a support role, is typically now pretty much a leader in terms of deciding where the businesses are going. And coming back to the fact that how again, businesses are responding. They have to respond with agility. I think that's what Dr. Neeta also said. And the organizations have to be able to scale up very quickly. And also now new geographies are being accessed, reached out, thanks to the digital infrastructure, which is ever increasing. And obviously the population, the customers, the citizens, which are now becoming more digital savvy. So yes, all this has played out in terms of enabling, data generation, and therefore more data centers coming into play.
But were you prepared for all the the sudden influx during this time?
Okay, so now if you look at by definition, we said Legrand Data Centers solutions designed for agility. Now, design for agility has two connotations. One, as an organization ourselves, the short answer is yes, we were. But we did face challenges, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of logistics, trying to ensure that the supply and services were not disrupted. Sure, there were delays, but we managed to deliver everything which was promised. And the second part of the design for agility is the products and services which we provide to the data centers, both in the gray space and the white space, are designed in such a manner that they enable the data centers to become agile. So it is pretty much the bedrock of a thought process, both for our customers as well as ourselves. So short answer is yes, we were very short. We did have to gear up and tweak here and there, but yes.
Absolutely. Ravi, from what I understand from what Dr. Neeta and Sanjay mentioned, the COVID-19 outbreak actually has further pushed the need for more data centers in the country. And with the remote hybrid work models now in place, and a lot of companies are obviously pushing for that. Data centers obviously play a crucial role in accessing, overseeing, and processing large volumes of data. What is your take on the sector from an investment point of view, and the sort of outlook you have for that?
Look, Sanjay actually described, the flywheel, which I mentioned perfectly. And if you remove the world technology into compute, it actually makes tons of sense. Cost of compute has tremendously gone down. I don't know, I built my first cloud 14 years back. I don't know why it took COVID for everyone to realize that it's actually a pretty robust architecture and economic model. And the reason it took a lot of time, because providers of this technology, they were going company to company as they were selling a portfolio or they were selling a product. And consumers of infrastructure, they were basically thinking, hey, by the way, it's a legacy transformation project for them. And nobody actually thought it actually makes tons of sense that in this particular case, compute is driving new economics, okay? And it is sector agnostic. There can be constraints in terms of maybe regulatory hurdles or data structures kept in some way, or unstructured data or structured data, and how to integrate them. But today, if you actually look at it, look, there are 5 economies which are coming up and which will dictate future sectors and future industries. And all these 5 economies are basically catalyzing GDP of every country, some more and some less. Creator economy, it's $30 billion, less than 8 months old, Manu. $30 billion year on year to US GDP. And creator economy, will add tremendous value in India. So that is one. Platform economy, it already have mentioned, is already a 1%, India's GDP, totally run on compute, whether directly, indirectly on that. Experience economy, 11% of European Union GDP. I'm just, opening the world for you. Okay, 11% of, European Union GDP, high quality compute, okay, which I call as intelligent compute. So data center businesses who want to graduate into high margin business than just a real estate business, that is a market for them. Gig economy business surprises me that in India, why it is still 1.25% of GDP. I think, it would be very soon $1 trillion, economy within India itself. And the last one is a circular economy, which is may come little bit later, depending upon what government wants to do with. But if you take European Union, by 2030 or something like that, it will be like $1 trillion economy. If you look at all these 5 economies, Manu, all these economies are driven by compute.
Right.
Now it is for investors, or it is for people who are building data centers to think, do they want to be in the real estate business of data center, or they want to be in a high margin business of where I will invest. Of course, I'm going to invest where the high margin, which I call as intelligent compute business of that. Is that a tough thing to do? I think it is a complex thing to do, but not a tough thing to do. So it is in that particular area, because then other future economies will come where I will put my money, Manu.
So in that sense, is the Indian market, where do you see the Indian market at this point?
India, I am bullish. Indian market, you invest in any of these, new economies, you're going to get return. Of course, you have to do your due diligence in terms of whether you are investing in the right company or not. That's a company specific discussion, which can go right and wrong depending upon how much hard work you have put in your due diligence and in your thesis. But overall, in any sector, especially in creator platform experience and gig, you will unlock tremendous value and can generate wealth for us, and as well as for India and civilization as a whole. So quite bullish on that.
Certainly. Let me bring in Shiv Kumar here. In recent times, more and more financial organizations regard the building of effective internal control framework as one of their key priorities, and of course a guarantee of further success. What are some of the steps towards building an efficient internal control framework according to you?
Thanks for the question, Manu. So on the very first note, let's probably, I'd like to take one step backwards. Maybe I'll choose the word instead of, saying controls. I'll say it as hygiene right now.
Okay.
Now, being, I'll never say security or controls as controls or say or regulatory. We would rather prefer to say that these are hygiene factors. Now, let me reiterate the same thing. Why? Let it be any industry. Right. Let it be any industry. A security compromise can lead to 2 kinds of impacts, or say they impact 2 things mainly. One is a monetary, and second one is the brand name. Right. Now, monetary is something that could be covered about because we have digital insurances and we have more kind of robust mechanisms in which we can still backfill that kind of a debt. But it is the trust of the people. As I've said, digital is divine. Right. Now, what drives a user's confidence on any given digital system? We're talking about 3 major factors: availability, scalability, and security. Now, if we simply say that security is a control that we're trying to put in, then probably we might want to reiterate that as hygiene, because internal hygiene or internal control framework is all about to ensure that we are ensuring the trust of our consumers, and also at the same time we are providing utmost privacy and security to the kind of data that we are handling. I heard from someone on a very informal note that if there is a war in future, it will be about data, right? Now, and information is wealth. In fact, that is how we are trending, and all the organizations across the world, they're moving towards data-driven mechanisms. And the only way how we can bring in more confidence into our consumers is by ensuring that there is internal hygiene and controls, necessary controls. Now, having said that, this should not be a one-time solution. Any framework, it should be a process. Precisely, security is a process. It's not a one-time solution that you implement and you move on. No, not exactly, because one thing that we have to notice, the bad players in the market always outrun the number of players that are trying to defend, right? So so keeping that in mind, we have to always keep revising these controls And last but not the least, it should not be a specific team or a specific wing in a given organization who is doing the control framework or say security or compliance. In fact, it should be the day-to-day task of every person who is working for an organization and who is responsible to deliver any outcome. It should be there, a part of their day-to-day responsibilities, in fact, sorry. In simple words, I'll say at NPCI, we take internal controls or say the security compliance factors quite seriously, right from starting from the physical layer till the most complicated physical layer in terms of people, or let it be laptops or entry points of people, or let it be in the utmost topmost software layers like applications we are talking about. We take security everywhere. We consider, in fact, security should not be an afterthought. It should be a part of the organization, and every employee should be a part of this game.
Absolutely. So Ashok Singh, do you sort of agree with that? Because banks, I think, are sort of vulnerable, prone to all sorts of data attacks and things like that. So what are your thoughts on that?
Surely, I fully agree with him. Security is not an option, and the security is responsibility of everybody. And security should be ingrained into each and every step of each and every journey and the process. So that's very, very pertinent point which he has raised, and that is very important for any organization. Although it may be more important than for the bank, because we are managing people's trust and their money, right? So yeah, absolutely, I agree, and that is what is ingrained into each and every process, each and every technology, each and every new development, each and every product. Security should go hand in hand. It can't be afterthought.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Dr. Neeta Verma, changes to these to data center strategies and facility footprint were earlier just sort of a once in a career effort and undertaking. Of course, that's not the case anymore. And with the abundance of choice regarding capability, cost, hosting solutions, data center strategies are now being, of course, reevaluated for I think every 3 to 5 years. What are the latest trends and the top strategies or priorities for modern data center in a volatile and an uncertain world?
Very, very interesting question. You see, there was a time when data center, when we were hiring, it was primarily a colo kind of facility. You buy your equipment, keep into a data center because you could get continuous power and high speed network and so on and so forth. Or even if you had captive data centers, that is how it used to be.
Right.
Now, into the era of cloud, where everything is practically virtualized, you don't have to now ask for any demand. In fact, not only you're getting platform as a service, now you're getting anything as a service, AI as a service, to data analytics as a service. So this has given that flexibility for the organization to move from one to the other. Second thing, so it is not all that cost intensive, it is not all that effort intensive also. You primarily have to move. Second thing, what is happening is also, if I see some of the big organizations, it is not that they are onto one public cloud, they'll have multi-cloud kind of a facility. So maybe because these public cloud companies also are exhibiting a tremendous innovation. They're trying to make life as much as simpler for the end consumer or for the corporates, and it's a kind of one man chip of the other. So every day you should see a new kind of a feature, a new kind of a service is being done. So therefore, whenever I am getting on to another new vertical of the organization getting digitally transformed, I can always choose to the network. And the kind of this whole API and connected and hyper connected bird kind of a thing, in which we are connecting system to each other, is not that difficult as it used to be some into our legacy systems. So that is also giving them the flexibility of having this at various places. But the only thing I feel one has to be concerned, and which I have seen in many of the cases when I go as an advisory role, is in their enthusiasm of taking these public cloud services and all. Sometimes they get into a captive thing. They leverage on those proprietary tools and technologies built by those cloud service providers, which kind of again make them captive to that particular data center or that particular service provider, and which in the long run becomes a challenge and sometimes starts becoming a constraint for you. So one has to be really making sure that you are not using those features or those services which will make you captive to that, which is proprietary and only available with that service provider. Now,
Absolutely.
as an organization, because especially the large enterprises, when I was keeping my data center into my premises, psychologically also I had a feeling that yes, it is in my control. And also the way the cyber security, as someone said, that the new war will be data war. To me, look, I mean, the all this physical war, new war will be completely a cyber war, and we are already seeing the signs of that. So, therefore, the cyber security is a major concern. It is a concern for the people who are hosting services in public cloud and services. It is also a concern for cloud because there is also a lot at stake. How do they really, while giving all these services, how do they really put that agile framework of security, which, despite giving all these flexibilities, keeps the system secure? I mean, and which is not that perimeter security as we need to go. The lot of things have come. You need to be into real time measures of security on your data center facilities. That is one of the concern, which, because we also operate data centers, and that's one of a major concern, and constant discussion has to happen on that. And another thing which is happening is on the data part of it, because lot and lot public sensitive data, lot and lot strategic data of the corporates is getting into these data centers. So one has to be really wary of any kind of a data breach happening. And this is a combination of not only data center or cloud service provider, application plays a role, the end user devices and end users practice of using these systems. This is very comprehensive. Therefore, I always say you need to have a look at a 360-degree view of this ecosystem and make sure, as we often say in security, the weakest link is the challenge. So therefore you need to really strengthen all these aspects to be able to really make sure that data is also protected. So I feel
Absolutely.
data protection and cyber security are two concerns on both the sides.
Sanjay, do you think that strategies on data center, of course, now being looked at far more closer than it used to be before? And secondly, what are some of the challenges that are associated with the current data center infrastructure? And what sort of growth are you going to see in this hyperscale and micro data centers across India?
Okay, so I think your first question and part of the second question are similar. My response is similar. Besides what Dr. Anita mentioned, the additional point in the strategy is enhanced efficiencies. Typically, when data centers were designed, they were designed on the fundamental or foundations of what I call what we used to call business continuity. So there was ample amount of excess capacity in everything. Now we've reached a stage because we have to be scalable quickly. We have to be agile, etc. So data centers have to be far more efficient in their operations. You cannot have excess capacity beyond a certain X amount. I mean, honestly speaking, I was surprised when we got onto understanding what data centers, how the data centers were designed. Typically, they had an excess capacity of anywhere between 40% to 50%, whether it was space, whether it was power, whether it was cooling, gensets, UPS, etc. Now, data center managers, organizations have realized that there is excess capacity. The challenge which they've been faced with is to identify where is this excess capacity within a data center and how much is the excess capacity. And so that's what they're looking at the current stage in terms of strategic path, because obviously real estate is very, very expensive. So how can they optimize space? And when you look at what Ravi was also talking about, that the driver of all this is compute. To compute fundamentally means you're generating more heat. You're looking at new cooling technologies. The way you're approaching cooling in data centers has been looked at very differently now. So the whole ballgame has changed on that front. In terms of your question on the growth in the micro data centers, the growth in the regular data centers, whether they're on-premise or colo or on cloud, that's happening. And that's happening at whatever pace it is happening. I mean, there are various projections, which is fine. But as far as micro data centers is concerned, there is definitely going to be a growth. But I think what my observation has been is the challenges, like typically data centers are being looked at from the technical side and from the CIO, CTO point of view. But as far as micro data center is concerned, it's more of a business decision in terms of where they want to grow, how they want to grow, what are the services they want to address to the end consumer. So it's just not like putting up a micro data center in a store. The business has to be actually equally involved with the technology. So that is, I think, taking a bit longer for the synergies to work within the organization. And I see that happening slowly. But yes, is there a growth in the micro data center market? Sure, there is tremendous growth in the micro data center market as well.
Absolutely. Ravi, do you reckon the same? I mean, in the micro data center space, is that going to be the trend that we are going to see? And from a VC point of view, how are you sort of looking to take advantage of that opportunity that's in front of you?
Yeah, of course, yes. That will grow on, and if you actually look at the operational realities of today's world, almost everything is becoming e-enabled. Just for an example, if you take 320neo or CEO, it's an e-enabled aircraft. If you take a Dreamliner, it's an e-enabled aircraft. It requires tons of data to operate. It gives tons of data, so anything which is on edge will be required. And if you really want to capitalize on edge, then you have to basically work on satellite data center, micro data centers, cloud, and all that stuff. What do I look for? Strange answer, Manu. Okay, bear with me. As a society, sometimes we are we think like fashion industry. A fashion comes and then we wait, and then the cycle of that fashion repeats. Also, same thing will happen in compute. Centralized compute is evolving, and it is going towards decentralized computation, which will definitely happen. So it's not about one or other. I think both these businesses will remain, because as a society also, we have emerged from a centralized society, which we used to love, and now into a decentralized society. And, we will go back, maybe in a spiral, not in a circular way. And I think same would be the story of compute, because compute actually follows how society follows. If you actually look at history of compute or computer science per se, it has always followed society. It has never followed science per se. Science was always evolved. It has always followed society. So from that aspect, where would I invest? If it's a hardcore question you have asked, hardcore answer, I would actually invest, where a couple of things have happened. Again, taking a clue from Sanjay, cooling, of course, I would invest in a company which may have created a polymer which will help to cool faster, cheaper, and all the stuff. Just giving a very technical answer. But where would I invest? I invest in anything which is solving 2 or 3 problems. One, decentralized compute is still very, very expensive. Any tech which brings that decentralized compute to a level lower or a similar level of a centralized compute, that is one. Second, any framework or any architecture or any tech stack which actually solves 2 problems for compute. One is a problem of latency. Another is a problem which appears in the race condition when two nodes are in a conflict nature. Anyone who tries to solve these 2 problems, I would like to invest. So one is a pure material science use cases. Other are 2 computer science use cases. Why I would like to invest? Because while I have mentioned these 5 economies, I think decentralized economy or decentralized computing will totally disrupt, and I really mean that, totally disrupt, and will create but create is different thing. One, digital twin is already happening in hardcore, supply chain, traditional manufacturing and all the stuff. And that's where most data center use cases are. I think that will disrupt. And decentralized, computing will fit beautifully in that particular space. Another is the bioeconomy, which will emerge. It is, by the way, not many people talk about it. It's already 2.7% of India's economy in food and fuels. And that is a very, very good use case for decentralized computing. Hence, kind of giving you a flavor of my investment thesis when it comes to, compute and investment in compute.
I think the audience they've heard it very clearly, from you where you will be putting your money. And we've got a whole bunch of questions from the audience. So I'll just start taking them. But before that, I just want to turn to Mr. Shivkumar for one last question before I move to the question from the audience. Shiv, there is a talk about the data centers being given an infrastructure status, which will of course bring it on par with railways and roadways and things like that. Do you think the government is doing enough at this point, and what more can they do for the sector?
Well, I think, in my humble opinion, the initiative looks really promising, right? So they're primarily the government is primarily looking into 5 things. So they are enabling the ease of doing business as per the draft policy what they have published already. They are enabling a favorable ecosystem. The next one is they are trying to set up economic zones for data center. Fourth, they are trying to promote the tech development, research, and capacity building. And last but not the least, they are also trying to what they have also proposed is they're going to form a committee which is going to keep revising. I think Dr. Nita ma'am has already mentioned about that. Where the technology is going to be revised again and again, and this committee will ensure that they will be keeping up to the latest trends. So let me just quickly take a step back and let's take a look. What does a data center need as an ecosystem, right? Data center there are multiple different types of data centers, and in fact, one thing that I want to also highlight is NPCI is building its own tier 4 data centers. It's already there out there. So we are in the process of building our own data centers. We will be soon moving out of our colos and to our own data centers. In fact, now one thing what we have learned is in a good way is that building a data center is not a small task, right? It requires a large ecosystem. To start with, there's a connectivity that is required, power requirements, and a lot of other requirements, or say supporting factors that play a huge role in a successful data center's operation, day-to-day operations, right? Now, I think the draft policy looks really promising, in my opinion. And last but not the least, one thing what I want to say is, as per the draft policy, they're saying they're going to promote tech development, research, and capacity building. Now, let's take a look at one given point of time. So when any organization is operating out of a colo or a public cloud or a private cloud, see, cloud is again another data center which has an API orchestration layer on top of it. Now, if we boil it down to a level where we are looking at the compute, right? It's about, in a given space or a given area, how much compute can we process. That is how the data centers are, right? The floor bed and the resources that are available, and how much compute power do we have. If we do a simple math, what we have realized over a period of time is that we need to squeeze in more power in less space. In other words, in the recent times, we have seen more and more powerful phones coming up. We are seeing that the server form factors are getting smaller and smaller. The whole ideology is, with the data increasing on day by day, we are seeing that there is a lot of importance that has to be given to the data, because data-driven decisions can rarely go bad, in fact. So the data is invaluable, right? It is priceless, in my opinion. And as per the old times, if we just store the data, and if we are only pulling out the data just in case if you want to refer something, no, the times have changed. Even yesterday's data or even 10 years old data is helping us to make a better decision for tomorrow and for the best. Sure. And if we want to really crunch data at that scale or that much amount of data, we need more and more compute. And we need more and more compute. We need more and more space. Now, can we really geographically keep expanding the footprint of data centers? Not really. Not really. So precisely, we need to. It's high time that we concentrate on micro data centers and other data centers, apart from the public clouds, which are already present, which are making the life of the tech guys more easier. Of course, the policy is definitely helping, and I think there is a brighter and a better future for the country, for sure.
Certainly. So I'll just move to the questions that have come from the audience. The first question is, what are the risks in financing data center projects, and by when will the demand supply situation get balanced? Questions come from Vinu Topil. Let me, I don't know, I mean, who would like to take on this question? Sanjay or Ravi? I don't know, one of you guys.
I mean, I would defer it to Ravi. He's a finance guy. Uh, but from my perspective, the short answer is it's like any business. There are multiple factors which you always need to look at into any business. Uh, so, I mean, I can talk, but I think Ravi would be a better
No,
person
Sanjay,
to
you go
respond to
ahead.
that.
Right.
No. I'm leaving it to you. Thanks.
What was the question, please?
Ravi, the question is, what are the risks in financing data projects, and by when will the demand supply situation get balanced?
Well, I agree with Sanjay. I think it's a straightforward answer. It's a business as usual. Why would why would you like to solve this particular problem? Look, India is growing, and the more India grows, there would always be a non-equilibrium between demand and supply, and the more non-equilibrium is, the more it will give gravity to more investments into this particular business. So in a way, why would you like to solve this problem? This is actually a good problem to have till we basically hit a plateau, and hopefully that plateau will be world's biggest data consumption country in the world.
Certainly. I hope that answers. The second question is, as per one of the panelists, large data centers are economically viable. What would be the threshold size? I think Sanjay would want to take that.
Large data centers are economically viable. Well, they're only economically viable if you run them efficiently. Sure, the shift to cloud and hyperscale, which is happening, is purely because of the fact that because they are large, they are able to, their cost of operations are low. But the amount of effort which goes in to make these data centers efficient is tremendous. I mean, it's very difficult for me to explain and to see what Google and the Facebook and the Apples of the world, they do to make their data centers efficient. I mean, these data centers, I mean, all of us, I think, understand the concept of PUE. While most data centers, for example, operate at a PUE of now about 1.5 to 1.6, earlier 1.9, and we are trying to struggle to reach 1.3, all these big guys, their PUE is in the range of about 1.1. The amount of R&D, the amount of effort, the research these people do is enormous. I know for sure that Google uses AI to improve efficiencies in data centers. So if you were to ask me what would be the threshold size, there is no threshold size, because the way I'm going to answer that question is, even if you have a data center of 20 racks, can you make it economically viable? Yes, you can make it economically viable, provided you use the right technology, you use the right infrastructure. I mean, it's as simple as that. I mean, whether it's 10 racks, 20 racks, or 100 racks, you have to choose the right technology for the right scale, and that's important.
So we have time for two more questions. So the other one is, with the shift to digital, cybersecurity threats and data breaches have become a discussion in every boardroom. Can you shed some light on the threat landscape in India and how it compares to other markets? Maybe Ashok would like to start, and I'll put the same question across to Dr. Neeta as well.
As I already replied that yes, we need to build the security and make it as a process, process at each and every step. So it is very important to safeguard our data, okay, our services, okay, everything with security. So security must go hand in hand. Security should be in step, and that is the way your thought process, your approach, everything from the point of view that whether whatever I'm doing is secure, whether I'm leaving any loopholes, whether there is any loopholes. Constant thinking about the security vulnerabilities is very important, and taking care of those vulnerabilities is also very important. So this is the approach. There is nothing, so as I said already, that it can't be afterthought. You have to give highest importance to cyber security in this age of data, where data is fuel as well as data is your wealth.
Absolutely.
Okay, every information is becoming data, and every data is becoming information. So that is what is, you have to secure your data, and every data is relying on your compute services. Okay, and which you have to make it accessible to all the stakeholders, and you have to ensure that that is done in a secure way. It is, data is available to those whom it should be available, and data should not be available to those whom, and from access to modification to addition, everything has to be secured fully.
Right. Dr. Neeta, would you also like to sort of comment on that, on the threat landscape in India and how it compares to other markets?
On comparing to other markets, no, but how it has changed or how it's evolving, I can just discuss some on that. See, first of all, these all cyber attacks are becoming more and more sophisticated. Many of them, they are not often those fun kind of a thing. They are now motivated, and motivation could be of different order. Therefore, they have the patience to plant a breach in your system today and maybe blow it 3 months or 6 months down the line. So that persistent, that threats is another thing which is happening. You may not even get to know when it entered into your data center premises. And with this COVID and this mobility, work from home, people accessing systems from various places, global organizations, the whole threat has become it is really spread in a big way. And as I always said, if you really have to secure data center, you have to secure it all layers, which goes from your physical security to a perimeter to all, going to your endpoint security. The endpoint devices used also have to be, and when you become mobile, you become work from home and all those things, that spectrum really increases in a big way. And another thing which is happening, which was there earlier also, these applications, even if you have world class data center with every security put in, if the application design is not really designed with security in place, all efforts just get completely nullified. And therefore the cooperation of all those teams who are developing the systems, therefore in an IC or to my all teams, I say, do not design your systems to be secure as a result of an audit report. They have to be secure by design. So right from architecture level, right from basic design level, you have to question what security measures we are going to take, because security is becoming very critical. More importantly, when organizations IPR data and citizens personal data is at stake.
Absolutely.
Thank
Last question from the audience, and then we'll move to closing comments from everybody about the upcoming year and how the future of data center will look like. This question is: what would be your security advice to Indian enterprises who are transitioning to the cloud and adopting next gen technologies like AI, ML, blockchain, IoT? Sanjay, would you like to take that quickly?
What would be the security? I don't think there's a better security advice than what Dr. Neeta said just now, and
Absolutely.
what has been discussed earlier in this panel. Security is not with any government, not government. I'm saying is not with any department per se. It's fundamentally a culture now. Uh, it has to be an organization culture about security. It's as simple as if, and I think Dr. Neeta also spoke about it earlier, the end user devices. Now, I may be, for example, suffering from a hearing issue and I may have hearing aids. Now, hearing aids would be connected to my phone, which would have Bluetooth, but I'm using that phone with my hearing aids in an organizational network. Now, how does the organization or me ensure that my devices, the tools which I'm using, which are for my enablement, are still secure? So both the organization has to look at and be considerate towards that. Plus, at the same time, as an employee, I have to be conscious of the fact that what I am using is also not being the weak link in the secure chain. So it's not about it's not about some tools or measures or whatever. It is security is now an organization culture, and that's it. I mean, I don't see any other way around it.
So on that note, I think questions are Sorry, I think that's a comment from Shivkumar. We'll look to wrap the session, and I thought we can take closing comments from all of you about how with 2022 on the horizon, what are the new challenges ahead? What are your predictions for the data center market in the upcoming year? So we'll start with Ashok and then go around to everybody for their closing comments.
Okay, see, now I will speak very specific to data center. Okay, so I mean, if I see 20 years ago, the data centers used to get full in some three years of time span because you were growing at that pace, but the virtualization technologies were not there. Then the virtualization technologies came, and because of which the data centers have shrunk, and not shrunk because even people you have built more data centers, you started freeing up racks because of you started using the consolidation using virtualization, right? So currently we have reached to a place where the virtualization has done enough to consolidate the data centers. So now again there is a spurt may happen in the data center because the high demand and high growth in the data center. Surely 25 years back, 30 years back, every organization was running multiple data centers. They used to call them server rooms. They were not calling them data centers. They used to call them server rooms. And the demand for interconnected compute was not much. I mean, every server room was working independent of that, independent of each other. But with these micro data centers, surely there will be a demand of a high bandwidth connectivity between the data centers of the organizations, and all of that challenges has to be faced. And since data is becoming critical, the security of data and how to make data while in motion, while in rest, while in use, secure will become very important. So that is, I think 2022 will see more focus on that with AI and ML becoming very important. All of this data boom will happen, and that data boom need to be kept in check and has to be secured. Yeah.
Absolutely. Shivkumar, your closing comments, and I think we'll do this quickly. We are well past our time.
Sure. Thanks, Manu. I think there's a bright future for data centers in a country like India. I think the largest number, or say the maximum number of data centers across the world, are present in the United States of America, which is the US. When compared to that horizon, India being a developing nation, this is probably the best time to look forward for the data centers. And I think with the advent of the recent data center policy from ET, I think it definitely has a bright future. And also, if you're looking at the Indian organizations, there is a startup boom that has already caught up. There are so many unicorns and startups. And there's a lot of data that we need to look into, and I think data-driven decisions are the best for let it be a country, organization, or even a person, right? So I think that's how I'd like to conclude. There's a bright future for sure. We're looking forward.
Ravi, I think you already mentioned it's a bright future. What are your closing comments on what the next year will look like?
Look, it's a simple flywheel, Manu. Compute is creating new economies. New economies are creating new compute, and this is a vicious in a good way flywheel. So a simple, data centers future is bright. Depends upon where you want to play. If you want to play a safer game, which I call as a compute real estate game, well, low margin game. Hopefully, if you run your business efficiently, you will create more revenues, sustainable business. Second one, value added business. If you basically plug applications and you deliver them as service over your data center and along with the compute, well, you can add on more margins, maybe more stickiness for your customers. Third one, which I've said, would be a multiplier business. If you really want to get into the science part of distributed computing, and whosoever wins the race of lowering down the distributed compute price, as well as solve the latency / race condition, they will win the world, Manu.
Absolutely. And Dr. Neeta, your closing comments on how the future looks now, at least the next year?
Yes, see, we as a society are becoming more and more digital. Government is putting in all efforts through putting fiber optic and policy data centers to bring rest of the people who are bottom of the pyramid to be becoming digital or digitally enabling them. So we'll have a huge consumption of digital services, and therefore we'll have a huge requirement of data center services, coupled with data protection legislation already in the parliament. And I have a feeling that not only we as a country will all have a lot of demand. If we could put a right set of skilled professionals in data centers, we could become a data center market for the world. This is a huge opportunity there.
Absolutely. Skilled professional, that's something Dr. Neeta referred to. Sanjay, your closing comments, where are we now and the future, at least next year?
Besides what everybody else has said, my take is, the additional take is that the past 1.5 years has been the reactive mode for all of us. We've responded, reacted to the environment, the situations we've been thrown in. My belief is what I call the next year specifically would be the calm after the storm, where organizations, businesses need to sit back, think through as to what's coming in the future, plan, regroup, reorganize, and then roll forward. So this is specifically to 2022. So it's more of a regrouping, it's reorganizing and prioritizing how you want to move ahead and prepare for the future.
Absolutely. I think on that note, it's been a fascinating discussion, and we've obviously well short past our time. Thank you, Dr. Neeta and gentlemen, for taking time out to be with us today. And from all of us at Forbes India, do stay safe, and especially with Omicron variant around. And all the best for the year ahead. Thank you so much.
Forbes India presents Data Centered, powered by Legrand Data Center Solutions, designed for agility.